that, we'll go ahead and get started. Before we start our budget season, we always discuss our budget goals and what our goals are for this year. Obviously, we're looking to try to get a balanced budget. We always try to remain competitive. Over the past few years, we've done a really good job of adjusting our scales as needed so that we're competitive with those other districts within our county. We also try to maintain our elementary class size core ratio of 21.5 to 1. We try to maximize all of our resources so that we can be in compliance within our established state ratios. And this year, our biggest goals, things we've been looking at over the last couple years, as you all know, our ESSER funds expire in September of 2024. And so we have positions that were funded through ESSER over the past few years that we had to look at those positions and to determine which ones we were going to retain and how we were going to fund those. Whether we were going to fund them through the general fund or either another source of funds. Along with our budget goals, obviously all this aligns great with our strategic change agenda goals, and you can see those 3 goals listed there as well. So let's start talking about some of the things that factor into looking at the budget. When you talk about our local taxes, districts are limited in what we can raise in local property taxes, and that is due to our CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and our population growth. These percentages are given to districts every year from the Office of Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. And so for this year, our CPI was 4.12, and our population growth was 0.49%. And so what you do, so districts, how do you determine how much you can increase your millage based on this rate? You apply the total of that rate to your current operating millage. Our current operating millage is 222.6. When you apply that percentage to that, we could increase, based on just this year alone, 10.2 mills. There's also a statute out there that allows districts to go back in what we call look-back millage. And so districts can go back up to 3 years of any remaining millage they left on the table. And so this graph shows you the past 5 or 6 years, the millage that we were allowed to levy, what we actually levied, and if any millage was left remaining. So in the 23-24 budget, you as a board decided to go back and recapture 3 years of remaining millage. And so that's what we did. From 22-23, we recaptured the 4.5, and 21-22, the 0.3, and in 2021, we recaptured 2.1. So a total of 6.9 on our look-back millage. And then the 10.1 of what we could levy. So last year, we increased our millage, which left 7.6 mills in this year that we're in that we did not capture. So if we take, based on that formula, the CPI plus the growth, where we can levy 10.2 mills, plus what we left on the table last year of 7.6, as a board, we could increase millage a total of 17.8 mills for the operating budget. After several budget work sessions and discussions, the board, we decided that we wanted to look at a 9 mill increase for this operating budget. And so what we'll do is we'll go back and recapture the 7.6 from last year that was left remaining. And of the mills we could levy this year, we'll capture 1.4 of that for a total of a 9 mill increase for the 24-25 school year. The other factor is our assessed value. I receive quarterly reports from our county auditor's office. We sums it up with our district and all 4 districts, and you can kind of see how our total assessed value compares to the other 3 districts in the county. Our assessed value, this comprises of all the property within our district, your 4%, your 6%, your 10.5%, all your vehicles, everything within the county. Obviously, we make up the biggest portion of the county. We make up 40% of the land mass. But when you look at our assessment, we only make up not quite 7.4% of the total assessment in the county. So we obviously have the lowest assessment of the 4 districts in the county, and you can see that there. And because of Act 388, which you are all very familiar with, we have to have 2 values of a mill. We have to have an operating value of a mill and a debt service value of a mill. So to get your operating value of the mill, I'll take, for example, ours. We're 143 million assessed value round total. So you have to back out that 4% property because 4% property owners do not pay school operating taxes. So when you back that out, we use about a 94% collection rate because unfortunately we do not collect everything that is assessed by the auditor's office, so we use a 94% collection rate. That's how we determine that value of a mill for school operations. Our school operations, excuse me, is about $73,000, and then if you add back in that 4% property to determine our debt service value of a mill, that's about $134,000. Obviously, one thing that stands out is we have the lowest assessment mill value on the operating side and the debt service side. And just to kind of put things in perspective, when we budget, in particular for a teaching position, it's on average about $100,000 now that we budget for a teaching position. And you can see one mill, $73,000. So it doesn't quite generate enough to pay that one FTE. Whereas you look at the districts around us, it more than covers multiple FTEs in that scenario. As we look at the revenues for next school year, our local taxes, this is at a 9-mill increase, is a little over $21 million. This is our third year going into that new state funding model, the education funding model. You can see it's split out by our general fund and EIA. Under general fund allocations, $25 million, and under the EIA allocations, a little over $5 million. Based on our House projections and our Senate projections, these numbers here are based on Senate projections. Those are the more conservative projections. As you know, a state budget has not been passed. It is in conference committee, but we feel comfortable going with our Senate numbers in this final proposal. Our other state revenue is about $13.9 million. The majority of that, almost $8 million of that, is our Tier 3 money. That is what replaced Act 388. That's the money that the state gives us. They increased the sales tax by a penny, and the money generated off that penny, that's what they allocate to school districts. So that makes up the majority of the other state revenue. And then our miscellaneous, almost $1.3 million. Almost $1 million of that is in interest alone. The rest of it's indirect costs and just some miscellaneous revenue. So you can see going into next school year, we're looking at total revenues, $67,365,188. So let's talk about the expenditure side. One of the expenditures that PEBA lets us know every year is what the employer portion of our health insurance, what that increase is going to be. We are looking at an 11.8% increase for the employer portion. That will take effect in January of 2025. We are not aware of any increase for the employees. This is for the employer portion only. We've had multiple conversations about what the teacher salary scale is going to look like. You saw different versions as we moved through the budget process this year. And so based on the scale that I shared with you our last work session, we did make some adjustments to our teacher salary schedule. And a beginning teacher, bachelor's with 0 years of experience, that teacher will start off making $50,055. That same teacher this year makes $45,180. So I think that's a lot to be excited about, the impact and what we've been able to do with the teacher salary schedule. Another big thing that happened at the state level, the state increased the minimum teacher salary schedule to 28 years. Our current scale only goes to 23 years. So we had to increase our scale from 23 to 28. And so to give you an example of what that would do for a teacher, let's say we have a teacher that's been in the district 26 years. That teacher would move from 23 to 26. So we have to pay that teacher on where they are as far as their years of experience. We also made some adjustments to our bus driver salary schedule. As we discussed in our work sessions, you know the state has a minimum bus driver salary schedule, and there are certain requirements that we have to meet to add to our scale. We've always paid above that, but they have requirements in place that we have to apply to ours as well, even though we pay above the state. Plus, we also want to remain competitive with our surrounding districts. All other employees will receive a 3% cost of living increase. And because those scales also went to 23 years, we couldn't go up to 28 for all of our other scales, but we are increasing it by 1 year. So next year, all of those scales will go from 23 years to 24 years. So those employees who are eligible for a step will receive a step next year as well. Another thing that we were able to highlight and take care of this year, our maintenance and custodian staff. They were 260-day employees, and we were able to adjust that down to 240 days, which is comparable to what the other districts in our county, their contract days for those maintenance and custodial staff. Our property and casualty insurance and our workers' compensation insurance, we've seen premium increases in those two, so we've allotted for that in this budget year. Obviously, maintenance with our energy costs and just the cost of doing business. Also in technology with the devices we have, we've allotted for increase within those two departments. Our continuation of our sick leave payout, just to remind you all what that is. Employees who have over 90 days at June 30th, in our policy, we will pay those employees a portion of their daily rate, of that rate to be approved by the board. So that is in this budget. Obviously, we want to continue to maintain our core ratio of 21.5 to 1. And at the end of the day, as I said earlier, our ESSER funds are expiring. And so in this budget, we have absorbed 23.5 ESSER positions. In addition to our ESSER positions, we've had multiple conversations about the new positions that would be needed in this budget. And so in addition to those, you see there are 8 new positions here listed as a part of a budget proposal for 24-25. As we look at our expenses for next year in total, our salaries and fringe totals a little over $59 million. That takes care of everything that you saw in your previous slides, your cost of living, your adjustment to your scales, your step increases, all the other increases within the departments we talked about. Our school allocations, $558,000. Department allocations, a little over $6 million. The majority of that, almost $5 million of that, is just within the maintenance and technology budgets alone. A lot of our energy costs, device replacement, those kind of things. Our SROs, $210,000 allocated there. As you know, majority of our SROs are state funded, but because before the state started having the state funds, we had 3 that the district had to pay, and unfortunately, they will not let us apply for those 3 SROs under state grants. We'll have to continue to fund those. So we have to set aside money to continue to fund those SROs. And then our other, a little over $2 million, the majority of that is in our sub-costs. A little over $1 million has been allocated for our substitute services. So you can see our total expenses, $68,143,304. Those are proposed expenses. And if you look at your revenues and your expenditures, you can see that there is a shortfall for the 24-25 year. Shortfalls in the amount of $778,116. And so we would be able to utilize our fund balance to balance the budget. And we had conversations regarding this at our previous work sessions. And just a reminder, fund balance, we have fund balance. That's what it's here, and that's why we have it. We also have a fund balance policy. That policy states that you can see the percent of general fund expenditures. That policy states that we do not go below 17% of our general fund expenditures. And so I've created scenarios for you all in our previous work sessions that if we utilize our fund balance, what that could potentially do. Worst case scenario, it takes that fund balance percentage to 19%. But just wanted to kind of give you a history of what our fund balance is. And that is a summary of our 24-25 budget.
So thank everybody for being in attendance from the public. This is a public hearing, so if anybody wishes to speak, individuals will need to be recognized to speak. Those with questions will need to state their name and their address for the record. If you could also, if you're present during this public meeting, sign the sign-in sheet so we have record of who's in attendance for the public hearing. You'll be allowed 1 question per person, and then if we have time after that, we can roll back around to those individuals. So with that, Ms. Hagner, if you want to see if there's any questions from the public at this time.
Anyone have any questions? I see none.
Are you complete?
I am complete.
Do we have a motion to close the public hearing for the budget for 24-25? Have a motion by Ms. Howell. Do we have a second? Second. Have a second by Mr. Revels. Any discussion on the matter? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We have now closed the public hearing.
Thank you
Ms.
very
Hagner.
much.
General session at 6:30. Thank you.